Every time I make one of these portable emulator videos, I always get flooded with two types of comments. One, why don't you just mod a PSP? And two, you should try the RG350. For one, congrats, you modded a PSP. I'm so happy for you. And two, I went to go buy the RG350 to shut some of you people up, and that's when I found this. The newer, updated, and presumably better RG350M. Can it live up to the hype all y'all were throwing my way? Is it better than every other portable emulator I've tried out so far? Actually, yes. Thank you, Honey, for sponsoring this video. That sounds like I'm thanking my honey. You ever try to buy something online and you go, I could super get this for cheaper? So you just Google random online store coupon, and then you're greeted with just the absolute worst websites. It doesn't have to be like that. Honey makes it way easy. I've been using Honey for years. I literally just used it to buy Mother's Day flowers and it gave me 10% off. That's $8 that otherwise would have just been gone. It's a free browser extension, so all you have to do is literally click this drop down and then click apply coupons. That's it. There's no downside. Collectively so far, they've saved their 17 million users $2 billion. So stop spending money you don't have to. It's free, and all it takes is a click. So get it now at joinhoney.com/wolfden, spelled like that. So thank you, Honey, for saving me money all of these years, and also for sponsoring this video. The RG350M is another one of these portable emulation devices. It plays NES, SNES, Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, Game Gear, Genesis, Neo Geo, Neo Geo Pocket, Arcade, WonderSwan, Poke Mini, DOS, and PlayStation 1 games. And if this sounds at all familiar to you, that's because, yes, it runs off of the same sort of operating system that all of these other portable emulation devices do. The Open Dingus.
Dingus.
These things are all kind of part of the same family with minor differences and upgrades that justifiably varies the price. So there's a spectrum of Open Dingus systems. The RG350M has a 640 by 480 IPS display, which is 2 times more pixel dense than the original RG350 and the Pocket Go, which was my previous favorite portable emulator. They all have the same size screen, but this one is just more pixel dense, which doesn't really matter that much when we're considering Game Boy Advance and SNES type games, but it does seem crisper. So this is definitely a nicer screen than anything I've tested before. This display resolution matters a lot more when it comes to PlayStation games, which look way better on the RG350M than they do on any other emulator I've tried. 640 by 480 is the native interlaced resolution of the original PlayStation, but the PSX emulator says that it's running at 320 by 240, whatever, it still looks good. You might also notice the D-pad is on the top of the device, which, as you may know, is the best position when you're playing retro or side-scrolling games. It's just the most comfortable. The original RG350 had more of an Xbox-style layout to it, which isn't very comfortable for most of the games you'd be playing on here. The D-pad is a nice, meaty, solid Nintendo-style D-pad, but more rigid than anything I've ever felt from Nintendo, in a good way. The face buttons also have a really satisfying press to them. It's almost a click, but it's not. The thumbsticks here really surprised me. These are just Joy-Con thumbsticks, complete with a middle click that I don't think is recognized by any emulator or even on the system level. Seeing these Joy-Con thumbsticks, your first thought is probably, oh great, this thing will get Joy-Con drift too. Calm down, you're not going to be using these thumbsticks as much as you use your Joy-Con thumbsticks. I absolutely hated the Pocket Go's little nub of a thumbstick. Same thing with the bootleg Switch Lite, it had the same sort of thumbstick and we get stuck all the time. So this is a welcome inclusion. Also, what's the point of just having one joystick? This one feels, well, just about as good as a Joy-Con thumbstick. It's a little uncomfortable holding it at the bottom of the device like this, but it's here if you need it. Honestly, not many PS1 games required dual analog sticks, so it's a bit overkill for this type of device. But I guess if you're gonna put in one analog stick, you might as well make it two. There are also 4 shoulder buttons laid out horizontally, which is fine for such a thin device. Again, that's only really there for PS1 games, but it is nice to map additional emulator functions to those buttons. Speaking of thin, it's not that thin compared to some older devices, but it's packing a lot of power. Dual 1 GHz cores and 512 megabytes of RAM. It's an aluminum body that feels really slick. Overall, I'm kind of amazed by the build quality here, which is usually lacking in these cheap Chinese devices. It feels really, really good. The aluminum gives it that premium look and feel. It also came with a screen protector, but I like to live on the edge. I'm not kidding. There's even these little rubber stoppers on the back so it doesn't slide off your table or your car's dashboard. This attention to detail is awesome, and frankly, I wish more devices had something like this. It's got volume buttons on one side, a power button on the other. The top has a USB-C charge port, a headphone jack, and a mini HDMI out, which is very exciting because it basically means this is the retro equivalent of a Nintendo Switch. Unfortunately, it doesn't work at all. It's non-functioning. Some Chinese devs got it to work, but it's a beta firmware and it's pretty buggy, so I opted not to put it on my device because I'd rather the whole thing work to the best of its ability all of the time. Thank you very much. If this HDMI port worked, I might actually like this device more than the Nintendo Switch if we don't include all of the great exclusive games that it has. But it doesn't, so this thing. There's also another USB-C OTG port, which is for connecting peripherals. Data transfer over either of these USB-C ports didn't work on my Mac, so I really have no use for an OTG port. Not sure if it works at all, really. Maybe it's another something devs can get working. I could see it being useful for plugging in a controller if the HDMI port worked. This device has a lot of potential if you're a dev that wants to fool around with a Linux operating system. It has a lot of interesting features that I'm not sure are entirely necessary, but could be cool if people could unlock it and get something stable going on. The bottom of the device has 2 speakers that actually sound surprisingly good, a reset button that I never use, and 2 micro SD card slots. We've seen something similar in the Pocket Go. The micro SD card that it comes with is for the operating system. Do not remove this or flash it or anything. Mine had a sticker over it that I scraped off because I don't play by any rules. I'm a badass bitch. That's what I wrote in the script. The second slot is for storing or transferring your own ROMs. I just loaded a micro SD card up with my own ROMs and left it in there. Now all of the emulators on the device instantly open to their corresponding folders on that card. It was very easy to set up. Speaking of ROMs, every single one of these other portable emulation devices that I've tested comes with ROMs. I always thought that was a little weird considering that's illegal.
Call the police, man.
And I made sure to say as much in my videos. This one did not come with any games. Now, I'm not sure if they only did that for me because they know that I'm a narc, or if it just legitimately doesn't come with any games. Just treat it like you would any old emulator or any console at all, really, and consider it a BYOR device. Bring your own ROMs. I feel like that kid in class who's like, "Excuse me, teacher, you forgot to give us homework." But listen, if these companies keep releasing these devices with ROMs on them already, eventually they'll get sued into oblivion, and then we won't have them at all, or they'll be much harder to find. So I'm doing us all a favor. You're welcome. Enjoy your homework. And who doesn't have a folder full of ROMs on their computer anyway? All right, so you're probably wondering how all of the ROMs run on this thing. Well, you'll be happy to know that they all pretty much run great. Some of them need some minor tweaks, though, to be fully optimized. I only really tested the main ones. Famicom felt like there might have been some slight input lag, but overall, it's fine. I'm using 2 times Psi 288 video scaling, whatever that means. I didn't like the default button layout, so I changed it so Y is B and B is A. The emulator saves your settings, but there's a weird quirk where you have to go into your settings and act like you're changing the controls before it remembers to switch to your new control settings. It's very weird, but I guess it's not the end of the world. There's 2 Game Boy emulators on here. I prefer the one that doesn't say Game Boy Color. They both work for Game Boy Color, so I'm not sure why they're both on here. The first Gambate emulator, I get it, it's a play on the Japanese good luck, allows for the biggest scaling options that preserves the original aspect ratio. It only allows for 2 different controller options, but luckily, alternate does what I want for A and B inputs on an SNES style control pad. The other Game Boy emulator doesn't even have controller options at all. You can just straight up delete emulators on here that you don't want anymore, but I'm paranoid. I like having everything. There's also 2 Genesis emulators. Genesis Plus runs everything just fine, but I've been using it exclusively for Game Gear since Pico Drive doesn't run Game Gear very well. Pico Drive runs every Genesis game I've tried flawlessly. No surprise here. Genesis usually always runs great on these things. Pico Drive doesn't have much video options, but the default is perfect as it is. The controls were not set up very well, but that was an easy fix that can be saved per game or globally. There is also 2 SNES emulators. Pocket SNES runs much better. SNES 9X struggled to play Yoshi's Island. Pocket SNES seems to work best with the smooth full screen option. It defaults to fast. Smooth isn't as sharp, but seems to get rid of whatever minor screen tearing there was with fast, if there really was any at all. I also set all of these emulators to show frames per second just for the purposes of this video, so you can see how they all perform. The Game Boy Advanced emulator is great. It's very simple. The scaling option is perfect as is, and controls can be edited pretty easily. Game Boy Advance is usually emulated pretty well on all these devices, so again, no surprise here. The biggest surprise was PlayStation. PlayStation games usually run like absolute ass on these devices, so I was blown away by the PlayStation performance on this thing. With the default settings, Crash Bandicoot, Metal Gear, and even Resident Evil 2 ran with no issues whatsoever. I can't even get these games to run good on my frickin' PC. There's always like a BIOS issue or something. You can see that the CPU is clocking pretty high usage with these games, but the RG350M is handling it quite well. I prefer using the D-pad for these games just because it's more comfortable. I don't want to shit on the thumbsticks. They're great. It's just a little too low on such a small device. But they're a welcome addition. Maybe you want to play Ape Escape. I don't know your life. I'll also mention that the Genesis and GBA emulators have fast-forward buttons, which is awesome. The GBA emulator wouldn't let me map it to the L2 or R2 buttons, so I had to map it to Select, which isn't the end of the world. You can always change it back if you need Select for a certain game. But fast forward is super useful for things like Pokemon. Overall, this is hands down the best portable emulator that I've ever used. The GPD XD is cool also, but that's expensive and not everybody needs all that horsepower. And honestly, I like this form factor more than the DS-styled clamshell. In a world where the only current handheld on the market is a Nintendo Switch, which has a severely lacking retro library, this might be a solid option for a lot of people, like the Izzy Nobres out there. For $130, this is definitely a premium device, so it makes it a little harder to recommend for most people. Nintendo Switch Lite is $200, and you can play all of the newest, greatest Nintendo games on it. If you're between the two, you should probably just get the Switch Lite. But if you want to play all of your retro games and you have the cash, then you're not going to be disappointed with this. The retro handheld market is growing rapidly. There always seems to be a new device to beat out the old one. If you have one of these older ones, like for example, the Pocket Go, I'm not sure if the upgrade really justifies the price. Unless you just really want to play your PlayStation library. If you want something cheap, the two Pocket Go's are still a great choice, depending on how cheap you want to go. But if you want that premium experience, this is a great new entry, and what I'll be doing my retro gaming on for the foreseeable future, until a month from now when they come out with the RG350X or whatever. Fun fact, the RG350 and RG350M are also Ibanez guitars. Just sharing the knowledge. Anyway, what do you guys think about the RG350M or portable handheld retro gaming devices in general? Is this something that you're interested in? Is this something you weren't previously interested in? Or do you just not care at all? Leave it in the comments below. At me on Twitter, any and all of this other social media garbage. Is there anything you'd like to know? Or what specific game would you want to play on here? If you want to get your own, I have an affiliate link in the description below with Retro Mimi. This is not an endorsement of that website. They ship straight from China. I hear it takes a while, and it also has to go through customs, which can be dicey. I always recommend to get it on Amazon first if you find it on Amazon, but this is so new that might be your only place to get it. So buyer beware, use discretion. I'd also like to mention I'm part of a giveaway with Kevin Kenson and Guy with the Hair for a Switch Lite. It's a Coral one, and it comes with Smash Brothers. So check out my Twitter, where there's a tweet that has a link that you can, friggin' enter to win a Coral Switch Lite if you want. Also, thank you, Honey, for sponsoring this video. It's a free browser extension, and it saves you money. I don't understand why people don't have that. Anyway, we got new videos and live streams all the time here. Our schedule is usually in a pinned tweet over on our Twitter. We got Wolf Den live every single Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern. That's our live podcast where we talk and hang out with you people. And we got streams over on twitch.tv/wolfden where we also talk and hang out with you people. Make sure you click the notification bell on Twitch so you know when I go live. And you know what? I'm probably live right now if you're watching this when I posted it. But of course, the most important thing and the easiest thing that you can do is just subscribe to the channel. That helps us tremendously. But also share this video with a friend who's really into that retro stuff. Maybe he doesn't even know that these things exist, or maybe has an old portable emulator and wants to upgrade to something a lot more premium and nice looking. Mwah. Why did I do that? Thank you guys very much. Have yourself a very good week. It's gonna take me a while to get over there. Hold on. I did it. Give me a hug.